Welcome to OptionsBrewTV. I'm your host, Lex, and my special guests today are two gentlemen, Grayson Roze and David Keller of StockCharts.com. I thought I'd do a little different today. So instead of my giving the background, I'm going to introduce these two guys and let them give you the background. They're way smarter than me and they have way better credentials, so I could mess it up. So let's do it that way. You guys okay with that?
That'll work. Yeah.
All right, let's Grayson. On my screen, you're in the upper left. So let's go start there and we'll move to David. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
All right, good deal.
Well, it's a thrill to be with you, Lex. And the last time that I was on, we were introducing ACP, and so much has changed since we did that last time. But if you didn't catch the last edition of the show that we did with Lex, my name's Grayson Roze. I'm a vice president of operations here at StockCharts.com. Really, my background is in being an individual investor. That's kind of my passion. I admit it full on. I am a stock junkie. I love following the market. So my job is really a dream, kind of getting to build the charting tools that I then get to go use in my own approach to the markets. That's kind of the dream job that I've ended up with here, working at StockCharts and then being an individual investor. So I started watching the markets actually when I was about 10 years old, which sounds crazy, but I had a crazy father who was a full-time individual investor. So he got me looking at charts when I was about 10, drawing trend lines and all that good stuff. And the passion really only kind of grew from there. Ended up, trading sort of aggressively as I got older and learning more markets, and really just kind of diving in, and ended up writing a book with my dad, Gaddis, that came out in 2016. That was Tensile Trading, the 10 Essential Stages of Stock Market Mastery. And then I went on to write another book, Trading for Dummies. So I've done a little bit of writing there, sort of teaching and things through a brand that I started with my father, with Gaddis, called Stock Market Mastery, and then working at StockCharts, building charting tools, and really getting to do fun stuff like this, like come on and join good folks like Lex and the Trader team. So
thanks.
Yeah, that's kind of my background.
That's awesome. Thanks, Grayson. Very well said. David, how about you? I think, David, you and I first time really getting to know each other a little bit. We've been on conference calls before, but we never get to really, something like this, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Lex. So my background, I started in the industry in early 2000s. So if you know your market history, I learned about technical analysis and charting when the market stopped going up and started going down. And so my first couple of years were in New York working for Bloomberg, and seeing the unwinding of the tech bubble. And I've always thought of charts and technical analysis more to manage risk than anything. And it probably comes from those formative years of seeing investors deal with the right side of the technology bubble. And then in 2008, I went up to Fidelity in Boston. I ran their technical research team for about 8.5 years. So we advised all the equity portfolio managers on what stocks to buy or sell based purely on charts, which was fascinating. Guys like Peter Lynch and Will Danoff and Joel Tillinghast were fascinating, encyclopedias of market knowledge to pick their brains. It was pretty fun. And then from there, I launched my own business called Sierra Alpha Research about 5 years ago, and primarily work with financial advisors to help them bring a better market awareness to their practice and think about decision making and how they're analyzing the markets. Joined StockCharts as their chief market strategist about 1.5 years ago now. Relocated out to the Seattle area, which has been an awesome adventure so far. And my job is basically to help our users make better investment decisions. I always say my role is to help people feel better about making better decisions. Right. I think, having a good toolkit to analyze the markets is in some ways the easy part. Actually doing what the charts tell you to do is the real challenge. And so I deal a lot with behavioral biases and mindset and routines just to help people implement a good trading strategy using charts. So yeah, that's my background.
Oh, great. Terrific. Wow. This is something. So, you guys both use the charts, and I know you use the ACP. We'll talk about that in a second. So that's the go-to point to get your signal, let's call it, to make a trading decision. Is that safe to say?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I both of us are technicians through and through. So, charts are always kind of first and foremost the most important thing that we're looking at. I know for me, that's primary. I mean, it's probably 80% of my decision making is based on the chart. I don't know, Dave, what you're.
Yeah. Same way, Dave?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I always think as an individual investor, you have 3 things you're trying to do. Number 1 is identify trends. Number 2, follow the trends. And number 3, identify or anticipate when those trends are exhausted. And I think for me, charts are the way you answer all of those questions consistently.
Right.
And so it's about identifying where the momentum is, leaning into what's working, leaning away from what's not working, and then using a set of tools to anticipate when those trends may be exhausted. And that probably right now is what I've been spending more of my time than anything focusing on, is the potential exhaustion of a frothy uptrend is how I would describe it.
Well, I have to admit, Dave, I noticed in your bio that you're a pilot. And to me, being a pilot means that you're disciplined in some way, shape, or form. And discipline is something that we really, really stress in our trading business back when we had it. And you know, you could use technicals, you could sell premium in options, you could buy premium options, but fundamentally, when it got right down to it, if you didn't have that discipline, right, it was really difficult to be successful. So it sounds like you guys are sort of in that path as well, right? That discipline is charting is, to me, is I love the picture of a chart, right? You can see things, and then you can be disciplined from what you see. I love that. And I think you guys have such a great product too with StockCharts.com ACP, right? Do you want to chat a little bit about that, about the product itself?
Sure. Yeah, we can
we
can jump into that. I love what you're saying about that, by the way, Lex. You know, I think for both Dave and I mean, I know a lot about Dave's process too. He knows a lot about mine. Both of us, discipline, routines, all of that. I mean, those are right there at the top of our list of what makes a successful investor. If you're not disciplined, if you're not following the same process every day, following the routines. I've talked to, I mean, Dave, you and I have talked a lot about the routines of flying and the checklists and all that stuff.
Right.
I love your rundown of, you know, how checklists are important in flying, and it kind of made you realize how checklists are so important in investing and stuff. I mean, the same approach carries over.
It's so funny because it's not, and what I learned from trying to fly an airplane is it's not about just making a good decision right now at this moment. It's making consistent good decisions by doing the same thing over and over. And when you're learning to fly, you don't just try something and see what happens. You repeat it, and it's so automatic. Then when your engine cuts out in midair, you're not trying to figure out what to do. You immediately go into, okay, then I follow these steps and I do it. And I find, you know, again, with people just learning how to use technical analysis, they kind of treat it as you just jump in the airplane and get it up in the air and then try to make some good decisions about it. And it's not that way. It's about going through and you know, having a really consistent routine, steps that you follow every time. And so it's not about just analyzing a chart and getting it right. It's about doing that consistently, doing that in a repetitive, you know, repeatable fashion. And I think that Grayson and I spend a lot of time talking about what we do every morning, what we do every day, what we do every week, to make sure that we're not surprised by things. We have a consistent way of going through. And for both of us, I think StockCharts and particularly ACP has been a central part of that for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So let me ask this question. We're getting a question here. So
Sure.
Relative to what you just said, is there a way, not, you know, in StockCharts, to take that checklist and automate it? Meaning, I know what I want to do, and I don't want to let the emotion overtake me. I want the machine to go ahead and perform my process and do it for me. Is that a possibility? Or is it something you guys are thinking about if it's not currently?
Yeah, you know, it's something that's becoming more and more real, especially with the Tradier integration now, actually having trading directly from the platform. It's something that we are evaluating. It's not something that exists currently, because in the past, you know, until recently, until rolling out that Tradier integration, StockCharts was just a sort of a portal to view your portfolio, watch the markets, all of that kind of stuff. It had no real link to your brokerage accounts or anything like that. So there was no sort of action that you could take from StockCharts other than just using us to make better decisions about what you were going to go off and do. So, you know, now that we do have that, it's something that we can actually evaluate, and it's pretty intriguing. You know, specifically because scanning for us is a big feature, being able to run these technical scans and find new opportunities that really fit your criteria. So when we think about combining those technical scans, which are based around exactly what you want to find in the markets, and then actually combining that with a brokerage account where you can place a trade, if we're able to automate that, it would be pretty powerful. So it's definitely something that we're evaluating.
That's great. Those are all good points. Yeah. So, you know, I have this little, I don't know, this little hesitation with the word automation, right? And that's why I sort of hesitate when I said it. I know what the pitfalls are of it, and we had an automation process in our pro days, right? But like anything else, David, you're a pilot. The machine can go wrong. That's why you're sitting in the cockpit, just in case right engine blows. You're there to kind of, pick up the pieces, as it were.
Yeah.
So we always had, in our pro days, we always had those safeguards, even though we could set certain parameters that we'd like to take emotion out of, right? So yeah, that's great.
Well, you know what intrigues me about the automation piece, I mean, I've got the same sort of hesitations I think that you do. But, for me, I kind of liken it to like stops. A lot of people set actual stops with their brokerage, but a lot of people set soft stops sort of on their own lists where they're keeping those levels in mind, but they're not actually entering the stop in their own account. They're just watching them really closely. So, potentially we could do sort of a similar automation light type of thing where we're basically saying we're going to do everything except place the trade for you, but we're going to start pestering you through text messages and emails and site notifications saying, this trade needs to go off right now, make a decision, but we're not actually going to place it for you. That's kind of like the soft stop version.
I like that version better.
Yeah, I kind of do too. I do too.
I've seen some disasters before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and it's funny, I think a lot of people think of kind of man versus machine, and should I be making a decision completely on my own, or should I be relying on a computer, a system to do it? And I think if you think of it as man plus machine and think about how you can both use what you're good at, there are things that machines are really, computers are really good at doing, automating a process, screening, identifying movements, finding outliers, seeing when something's unusual relative to what it normally is. Those are all things it's really good at. But in terms of actually evaluating things, thinking big picture about relationships and opportunities and how rising interest rates might impact your portfolio, those are things that I would rather think about myself.
Right.
And if you have a good set of models and routines that run, but you also have your ability to make an informed decision, the successful investors I've worked with are sort of sitting in the middle there in a really good place. That's what I hope our users are able to get to.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. Thanks. Okay, well, how about this idea? Now, pre-show we talked about some market, maybe macro market ideas and some stock specific. Does that fit into the wheelhouse for both of you? Can one speak about macro, one speak about micro sort of deal, or how do you want to proceed with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Who's the macro guy?
Dave, you want to take macro stuff?
I guarantee
I'll probably declare myself that one. Although Grayson, we could probably both speak pretty well about either. But for me, it's I host our daily closing bell show on StockChartstv. So every evening, 6 o'clock Eastern, I'm spending 30 minutes going through the charts, and it usually starts with a breakdown of the macro environment and sort of what sort of patterns we're seeing. Can I share the screen real quick?
Absolutely. You should be able to do it. You know how to do that with Zoom, David? I'm sure.
I have seen it done before.
You've seen it done before.
Here we go.
Okay, great. And Andre,
does that look okay?
Yeah, that looks great. Andre, if you could just put that, David, your time for your show every day. I missed the times. Can you say it again? We'll put it.
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock Eastern every weekday on StockChartstv.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, we'll get that in the chat. Okay, we can see you perfectly.
So, what I'm thinking of the market, I think, number one, just sort of big picture, where are we at? Number two, what opportunities do you see big picture? And then where do you see potential areas of weakness? And, for me, I'm seeing a market that I've heard myself describing as frothy a number of times. and the reason how I would quantify that frothiness is in a couple different things. I think if you look at the broad S&P, I think we've seen the S&P go higher, for a while now, but especially in the last 3 months, I think there's been a bit of a change of character. What we're looking at here is the S&P 500 at the top. At the bottom, we're looking at the percent of S&P members above their key moving averages. So at the bottom in green is the percent of S&P stocks above their 50-day moving average. Okay. So what's happened, if you look at the last couple months, really starting in mid-December, every time the S&P has gone to a new high, which again, if you know nothing else, follow the trend in the market. The market's making higher highs. That's bullish by definition, but the momentum is coming out of it. So if you look at the percent of stocks above their 50-day moving average, every time we go higher, less and less stocks are actually getting back above their 50-day moving average. They're not participating in this rally. Now, a big part of that's sort of the growth trade that's starting to unwind. It's stocks like Tesla, breaking down through their 50-day moving average and going on. So it's more and more stocks that are doing this. That's not the sign of an early stage bull market phase. That's something you more see at the end of a bull market move, is when you see, breadth kind of evaporate a little bit. Another thing that concerns me would be something like semiconductors. So if you're looking at the chart of the SMH, any of the major semiconductor stocks, a lot of bank stocks, a lot of energy stocks, you're getting what's called a bearish divergence. So you have the S&P or the semiconductor index going higher, but a measure of momentum. This is the RSI, the daily RSI. So just a simple measure of price momentum is actually sloping downward. So the market going higher, in this case, the semiconductor index going higher, but the RSI is coming off, right? So there's less momentum behind it. That's also, again, that is not 100% effective. You can see a similar pattern happened here in January and February of 2020. I don't know if necessarily we need another February to March of 2020, but we're certainly showing similar patterns to previous market tops where a stock or an index is going higher and there's less momentum behind it.
Okay.
So, those are warning signs. I think for me as a trend follower, that sort of answers that third question, anticipating when the trend might be done. I'm at this point wanting to see the trend actually turn. And what that would mean is on the SMH, for example, you'd want to see it not hold its 50-day moving average, but break down through it. It hasn't happened yet. It's actually held its 50-day moving average just fine. You'd notice the SMH breaking down through its swing low from January, breaking to a new swing low. That hasn't happened yet either. So at this point, we're still within the context of a reasonable pullback within a longer term uptrend. Those levels start to fail, and I think you transition from a frothy market to more of a rush for the exits, because I think a lot of people are looking at the 50-day moving average, previous lows, those hold, things are fine. Those fail, and you have to start worrying about further downside potential. You have to think about the S&P blowing down through recent support, getting down to like 3,200, and then what do you do? So I think we're at the point where the market has continued higher, but you're seeing some concerns, some signs of weakness, and now it's all about, are we able to hold support or do we break it?
Okay, let me ask a couple questions.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the RSI. Now, is this the RSI of a broad index like the SPX Spider versus the price movement of SMH? I see it's SMH on the top, but is this the RSI of the broader market?
Yeah, so to orient you, the top panel is the price of the SMA semiconductor index. That middle panel is the relative strength index. So it's just looking at the price momentum on the semiconductor index.
Okay,
so
so
when
it's not of some other broader market. Okay.
No, and it's sort of a misnomer. It's a poorly named indicator. You might call it internal strength. It basically says when the stock goes higher on average, how much higher does it tend to go? When it goes lower, how much lower does it tend to go? And it's simply a measure of price momentum. So the RSI being around 50 right now, it tells you basically we're even. Buyers and sellers kind of even, and we're sort of mid-range. The bottom panel is showing you the relative performance of semiconductors versus the S&P 500. And that's where you see the long-term performance story. You've seen that semiconductors have been good offense and they've been good defense. It's held up well in down markets, and it's performed well in up markets. That relative strength line turning lower would be I always call it a change of character. That would be a different look than we've had for quite a while if that would turn lower.
Okay, got it. So you brought up the SMH, which is the semiconductor. Is there another sector of the market that is really telling to you? If we roll over there, we're jump.
Right. So I would say the other things I mean in terms of opportunities, and I don't want to jump on Grayson. Grayson usually has way more tickers at top of mind than I probably ever will. He tends to traffic in good ideas better than I do. He's more of a stock junkie. I mean, for me, regional banks, if I would look at one other thing, it's the KRE. I think with interest rates rising, regional banks have done beautifully. And you look at Huntington or KeyBank or Fifth Third. I mean, these are all stocks that have had really nice runs. And I think as rates continue to overall appreciate, I think those are in really good shape. I think that breaking a level would be a pretty meaningful change that's unexpected for me. The question is, what do you do given a frothy market and given a potential pullback? Gold is probably one of the things I would be looking at, which is a bit, again, as a trend follower, that's sort of an unholy declaration to make, to say that something like gold is going to do well. But for this, I'm looking at retracement levels, and what's happened right now is if you look at the last year or so, if you take the low from March, take the peak from August, we've retraced about 50% of that overall trend, which means we're getting into that area where if gold is going to eventually go higher, which I think it does, we're right in that sweet spot, which is about where you'd expect it to start bottoming out. So I think if you think of safe havens, you think of potentially things that would hold up well given uncertainty in the market and potential downside in some growthy things that have done very well up until now, where an unwind could be painful. I think you could be entering more of a tactical point where gold could start to turn higher. So I think an upturn in gold, breaking back above its 200-day moving average would be a change that we've seen, because gold's been in a downtrend for 6 months now, pretty consistently. I think a change there would be pretty meaningful.
Okay. Is that a Fibonacci grid that you threw on there? Is that or
That is a Fibonacci retracement, and
Yep.
the general approach with that, I usually tell people, look for an extreme move. Start with a frame of reference, a framework.
Sure.
So for me, you know, a lot of stocks, it's the March low. Gold sort of hit a bottom there. This is the GLD we're looking at, by the way, not spot gold, but similar pattern.
Sure.
And so I'm taking the low in March, and then you're taking the peak from August. And then the question is, if we are within those ranges, where could you expect some meaningful support levels? And you know, from there, there's a subjective nature to it, because it depends on where you actually start those retracement levels that cause some different readings too.
I gotcha. Yeah, I see that. I wanted to kind of point out that you mentioned where you drew this. You were kind of in that 50% retracement zone, right? And is it a warning signal? Does the alarm go off if we start heading down toward the 62% zone, or not really?
So I would, you know, so the way I generally think of this is, if you're bullish on gold overall, if you think it's going to end up off the right side of the screen, up and to the right, which I think overall it will. I think long-term, the trend has been very positive. This last 6 months has been, I think, a counter trend move within a longer-term uptrend. Then the question is, where's the viable pullback? Where do you anticipate support? And those Fibonacci levels provide you with some guidelines. So right now we have what I'd call a confluence of support. 165 is support in the last, you know, couple weeks, but it's also the support you have from last November, when gold first broke below its 200-day moving average. You have a couple different techniques sort of lining up at similar levels. So if we would break that, yes, you'd look to the next support level. That'd be around 158, which, you know, interestingly enough, is the low you had from the second quarter of 2020. That's after that first big move higher. You settled down around 155, 160. So you're right around that same support level. So I think we're entering that point between now and 158 is where I think, you know, accumulating and expecting the next upside is pretty good. You break 158, I think you really, that whole idea of bullish gold needs to be unwound in your brain, because the chart doesn't support it anymore.
Right. Okay. Understood. That's great. Very cool. Grayson, you want to do a couple stock specific ideas?
Sure, we can throw a couple up there. I'm going to go ahead and grab the screen and show off ACP.
Awesome.
Which will be fun. So, you know, what's actually pretty cool for us, I mean, Dave is showing our legacy tool, our original sort of chart style. This right now, what we're looking at is ACP, which we call our advanced charting platform, StockCharts ACP. It's much more interactive. So this is all pretty dynamic. You can actually drag things around, move stuff up and down the screen, a lot of sort of animations to it. But, you know, we now have two different charting platforms, and both of them, I think, are fantastic. I still use the legacy tool a lot. I know Dave does as well. I'm sort of more and more bringing my process over to ACP, but both chart styles are still pretty valuable. So it's kind of fun to have these two different types to watch, which is cool. But you know, what we're looking at here is ACP, like I mentioned, pretty interactive and things like that. As far as I got financials up on the screen, because as Dave was going through his charts, I mean, that's one to me that's actually an interesting sign relative to you know, what the broader indexes are doing right now. You've got financials actually making new highs today. You know, obviously in the sort of the rising rate environment that we're in, that makes sense. But, you know, so much of the story for the last year, especially, has been the strength in tech, and people saying this market makes no sense. Tech is just continuing to get more and more overweighted in all these, you know, different ETFs and different indexes and everything like that. And what we're seeing, I think, right now is a lot of kind of resetting of the sort of sector distribution. You know, we're seeing a lot of strength out of financials, energy, materials, some of those other sectors, and tech is really the one that's kind of taking the beating. So in some ways, I mean, I'm actually excited to see kind of what's happening right now, because to me, in a lot of ways, it's more of a healthy reset for the market to kind of get us back to a balanced position. I think one of the things that really stands out to me is something like financials making new highs. I mean, we can turn on the inspector here. You can see, you know, making new highs, continuing to move higher, outperforming the market. This is actually our leading sector, scooter. So we have our own technical ranking system called the StockCharts technical rank. We call it scooters. And financials are actually the leading scooter right now, which is really strong to see. So I'm looking at a lot of names in there. I mean, Dave was mentioning regional banks too.
Mhm.
One that actually caught my eye the other day. I put out this list every week of sort of 10 stocks that I'm stalking, and one of them that's kind of an interesting blend is TradeWeb. So TradeWeb went public about 2 years ago. So we can actually scroll this back to be about 2 years worth of data. You can see we're moving up to new highs again. And we've been riding that 200-day moving average. That's the green line. We've been riding that higher, sort of in this wedge pattern, up to new highs, and kind of really now starting to break out. I love what I'm seeing out of TradeWeb, specifically because they're sort of financials plus a little bit of technology too. So I
Mhm.
think this is a really interesting name that's continuing to move higher. It's getting a bit of a boost maybe from its financial sector
Okay.
positioning, but it is in some ways actually a technology play. So I love what I'm seeing out of TradeWeb.
Trade.
Um,
What's the ticker there? Oh, TW. I see it.
TW.
Got
Yeah,
it.
you can see
Got
it
it.
here.
Yep.
Some interesting features too, by the way. We've got this pop out panel, which gives you some more data on the stock.
Mhm.
We've also got a new, I'm trying to think of, Lex, the features of ACP that are new since our last time kind of joining you on the show and showing off some stuff. One of them that might be new actually is the symbol summary panel
Nice.
over here on the right side of the screen. So for any ticker that you have up, let's say you've got an individual name like TradeWeb, for instance,
Right.
if you want to kind of learn a little bit more about that company, you can pop open this panel on the right. There's a little sort of file with a $sign in it. You pop that open and you get this what we call symbol summary panel,
Mhm.
which gives you a ton more data, market cap, things like that, volume, some fundamental statistics, which we're continuing to build out more and more, sort of a highlight of technicals. And the one that I actually use a lot is the corporate profile, especially when you're flipping through different companies trying to sort of research what is this company, what do they do.
Right.
We give you this little corporate profile down here. It gives you a description of the company. So lots
Nice.
of cool things to play around with in
Yeah,
there.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
That's really good information. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Grayson. I think from the last time I saw this version, I think it's changed
yeah,
a bit. So
Mm.
this looks
yeah.
fantastic.
There's a ton here too. Actually, one of the other things, since we're kind of chatting about it, one of the other big things that we've launched is multi-chart layouts. So you
Okay.
now actually have the ability to do up to 12 charts on the screen at one time. So we can do something like, for instance, let's do candle glance. So it's going to load here with all of the same ticker symbol, but I can go in here and start to change these. Actually, I'll do this and
Mhm.
click some of these other names in here. So you can get up to 12 charts on your screen at once, and these are still fully interactive. Anything you can do with a standard chart, you can do with one of these
Sure.
little mini charts. You can even sort of blow them up, view sort of an enlarged version of that chart, really sort of zero in on
Nice.
anything that you want to see, change the settings, add something, any of that, and then close it back down, and you're sort of back to your multi-chart
Very
grid.
cool.
And you can actually save these too. So you can see over here on the left side of the platform, I've actually got under your layouts, I've got a whole bunch that I've saved for myself. So
Great.
for instance, something that I do a lot, Dave and I are both constantly looking at sort of the same stock in multiple time frames, let's say. So we can actually do layouts like this where you've got a daily chart over here on the left side of the screen, and then you've got maybe a longer term weekly chart over on this side. Something that's got a little bit more trading history to it, like Microsoft, for instance,
Sure.
makes a little more sense in
So can
this
you
in this view.
do you even go down to the like a minute chart versus a daily versus a weekly? Do you do
Yeah,
anything like that?
yeah, absolutely. Actually, now that we got Microsoft up here, I'm going to do this sync option. So you can actually turn this on. It's pretty cool.
Mhm.
You can turn this sync option on for symbol syncing, what we call symbol syncing.
Right.
And when you put multiple charts up on the screen, anything that has the same symbol, if you change the symbol, we're going to sort of reach out and grab those charts that have the same symbol, and we're going to change all of those at the same time.
Got it.
So that makes a little more sense when I put up something like what we call our gallery view. So in this case, we're looking at Microsoft in 4 different time frames. So we've got a 1 minute chart up here in the top left. We've got a
Right.
daily chart here in the top right, a weekly chart, and a monthly chart. And these are, again, they're fully interactive charts. You can view sort of as much data as you want to see.
Mhm.
And then if I want to change this to be, for instance, Apple, because I've turned on that symbol sync option, it's going
Right.
to reach out and grab all those Microsoft charts and flip them all over to Apple at the same time.
Got it.
So you can really kind of flip through different things that you own in those multiple timeframes. It's pretty fascinating to see. And these are all, customizable. We've specifically set up, this layout with these indicators and things like that.
Mhm.
But anything that you want to put on these charts, if you just want a super simple, streamlined view, you can do that.
Sure.
If you want tons of indicators, you can do that. And again, you can sort of blow them up, view a full size of that chart, and then shrink it back down. So
and you could
layouts are probably one of the big enhancements that we've made.
Yeah, this looks great. So, and then you could do multiple layouts. So you could have this 4-pane layout for the different time periods, right?
Yeah.
And then you could have I'm making this up, right? Your FANG stocks in another layout,
Yeah.
and then you could have banking
Exactly.
and what have you. Fantastic.
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
And then what about trading? So now is ACP set up to trade?
ACP is set up to trade. So down here in the bottom left or bottom right corner of the platform, you can see the trade here icon.
I've seen that logo before.
Yeah, you launch that, and you can actually log into your Tradier account right from here.
Very
There's
cool.
sort of a drawer that pops up from the bottom of the screen, and it gives you access to your brokerage account. You can place trades directly from here.
Perfect.
It's pretty powerful. It's one of the biggest enhancements I think that we've actually made to ACP. It's definitely one of the things we're most excited about.
Oh, this is great. This looks fantastic. And so with
Yeah.
the trading, stock and options, or just stock right now?
Both. Yeah.
Oh.
You got unlimited options trading too for a flat fee.
Good. So it's the Netflix style model.
Netflix style model.
Love it. Love it. Go to the smorgasbord, fill up the plate, go back for
Exactly.
more. One price. I love it. Very cool. This is awesome. This looks great. I got to be honest. It does look different, Grayson, from the last time we were together.
Does it?
Yeah. Looks great.
Well, that's good, because that means we're doing our job. So
Right.
thanks for saying that.
No, it looks
And what's fun, I mean, hopefully what you guys are seeing, I mean, Grayson mentioned it. I mean, we both look at thousands of charts probably every day. And the good news about what we've been able to do, if it looks different and hopefully looks better, it's because we've been banging away at it in our own process all the time. So, I'm not just some random person designing this. Like we're using this to analyze the markets and trade our own accounts and analyze things. So it's coming from our own experiences that hopefully it's continuing to get better.
Great. And then a question from a viewer: do you have futures? I know the answer on the Tradier side, but I'll ask it of you anyway.
Yeah, we've got limited futures data right now, but it's again something that we're evaluating. Actually, we're getting pretty excited about really expanding our data set. We're starting to do that pretty aggressively. So we've just added after hours charting. We're building out a new after hours pipeline, which is pretty exciting. We built that into ACP. And we've added a lot more fundamental data. We're bringing earnings data to the platform, options data now through Tradier, and futures is kind of the next one on our list. So we're really taking kind of a wholesale look at our data offerings and starting to really dramatically expand what we have on the site. So it's a pretty exciting time to sort of be on StockCharts with all these new additions that we're making there.
Yeah, great. And I think, Gal, you guys know as well as I do, just the breadth of new entrance into the marketplace over the last year with the pandemic. People inside on a computer, and we talked about this before the show. I'm guessing this isn't our studio offices here. These are our homes. And you know what you can do with being in your home? You can trade and you can make great decisions with great software like this.
It's true.
Which, boy, and the numbers show it with the brokerage business, right? It was bonkers. I couldn't believe it, the stats on how many new accounts were open. So that's phenomenal. But tools like this are fantastic. This is great.
I mean, we've seen the same thing with our subscriber numbers, our traffic on the site. I mean, Dave, that's probably a great segue into StockChartstv and the growth that we've seen there. We've got so many people sort of clamoring for high quality financial education and insights in what's, the experts are seeing on the charts and things like that. It's
absolutely.
Yeah, Dave,
it's fun.
Go ahead. I was going to ask. That is a good segue. You want to talk a little bit about the StockChartstv, and then I'll ask a few questions and let you guys get back to work. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. I think overall at StockCharts, we're trying to do three things. We're trying to provide three things. One is tools, right? So tools to make better decisions. But we're not just kind of giving you the keys and then walking away. The second piece is education. So we have a whole part of the website called Chart School, where literally I remember learning some of the technical indicators I've now professionally used every day from StockCharts Chart School 20 years ago. So it is a fantastic resource that has continued to expand, and we're adding more and more content. And then the third piece is expert commentary, and that's where StockChartstv comes into play. Grayson, if you wouldn't mind just bringing up StockChartstv.com, we can show the new new site. So what we have is StockChartstv is a free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week streaming channel devoted to market analysis using technical analysis. So we have some of the top experts around, guys like Larry Williams and Arthur Hill, John Murphy, Martin Pring, hopefully myself far down that list of experts, we have coming on there. And, we're literally using charts every day to analyze the markets. And anytime you bring up the site, you have our latest observations on what we're seeing and how to go about it. I should make a point. We just released our new on-demand platform this week. So StockChartstv.com is out there. That's free. You're welcome to set up a free account, look at all the data on it, and nothing's hidden from you. You can watch all the latest observations, and also on all mobile devices. So Apple devices, Android, etc. But think of that as basically sitting, over the shoulder, look at what me and others are doing day to day as we're analyzing the markets, talking to our clients, making recommendations. You basically get to see what we're seeing and how we're doing it. So we've had a great experience so far the last couple of years growing StockChartstv, and I think this is hopefully the next step in many steps we'll take to expand it.
This is great. So, and this is the part that's on at 6 Eastern, I think you said. Is that correct?
Yeah. So my show, if you look at the upper left, that's called the Final Bar. So that's our closing bell show.
Okay.
We run it at 6 o'clock now, but all during the day there's programming that we're streaming through our website. Yeah.
Okay, and people can sign up for that, and it's free to them to view this. And
you got it.
That's awesome.
Totally free.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Great. That's great stuff. Yeah, you can't emphasize enough the importance of education. I'm with you on this, guys, because God, I've been doing this a long time, but I did it in a different world. We had a trading floor that doesn't exist anymore, and it's the hardest transition to come from the trading floor to the off floor world and make a good, profitable business for yourself. It can be done, but the education part, you need to really learn some really important skills. And I don't want to advocate one over the other, but an important skill, and you said it earlier, David, repeatable. You do it over and over again. You're disciplined about it, and it works. And just keep doing it, right? And without the education piece, I think people, I see a little bit of floundering. But this is great. This is a perfect place for folks to come and really learn some great, valuable tools. This is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's great to see a lot of individual investors, a lot of new investors empowered to enter the markets and make decisions. But if you ask to anyone, I'm sure the three of us and others, if you ask anyone who's been doing it for a while, they will share with you painful early lessons they made. That is those formative lessons that hopefully make you a better investor over time. And I hope people just getting started, especially, take advantage of resources like this to educate themselves and surround themselves with resources to make better decisions and learn along the way.
Right. No,
the cool thing is that process never stops too. I mean, it's fun for us to watch each other on the channel. And it's always crazy when we get someone like John Murphy, who's sort of a legend in our industry, one of the godfathers of technical analysis. Even he's emailing us saying, I watched this thing from Martin or Dave or Arthur on StockChartstv, and I picked something up and it was so cool to see, and I learned something. Right. It's like, how are you still learning something? You've been doing this your entire life. You're still learning something? Right. That's amazing. I mean, that's so cool for us to see.
That's awesome. That's funny, because I did one of these the other day with somebody, and he had a name of a spread. I go, wait a minute, I've never heard of that one. I'm going to learn something. This is awesome. I've never heard of that, but yeah, there you have it. No, this is fantastic. Okay, great. Can we ask a few questions and then we'll let you guys get back to work? Is that okay?
Yeah. So do you want me to stop the share or what?
Yeah, sure. If you want to, we can do that. That works. Sure. I'm eager to see if we're in different places on the screen. We're not. We're in the same spot. So terrific. So I guess one of the questions is, how do you use options with technical signals? Is there a way? Do you ever talk about an option spread, or buying a call, buying a put, or some subsection thereof? So that's the question. How do options interplay into this whole technical analysis?
Sure. So, I spent a lot of my time, especially early in my career when I was with Bloomberg, on some of the, SIBO and other places, working with options traders that use charts as their primary decision-making tool. And I always thought of it as there are different pieces to your process. I think the charts a lot of times tell you what's been happening, help you anticipate a probability of what could be happening.
Mhm.
And then it's all about what levers are you going to pull, right? If I think there's a low volatility environment, if I think things are going to break out, if I think they're going to go materially higher, they're going to find support at this level, options are a really good way to express that outlook in a particular way.
Mhm.
And so I found that a lot of the technical tools that we'll talk about, even if we're not talking particular about options, I think they will inform your decision in terms of how to analyze the market and how to think about price as a main decision point in what you're doing with an option strategy. I would also say, big thing what we're doing with StockChartstv is featuring more people like you, Lex, and others who are are using options and are comfortable with applying option strategies, and help people connect that, make that connection. Here's what I'm seeing on the chart. Here's
Right.
what the indicators are telling me. Here's where I find support and resistance. Here's what the strategy is going to do, and here's how it relates to those. Because
Right.
for me, when I've used options or when I've worked with options investors, it's all about here's where I see things headed. How do I express that with a
Sure.
particular
Yeah.
straddle or a
Mhm.
naked call or whatever you're going to
Sure.
do? And I think hopefully we're able to help people make that transition pretty well.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a great answer. Which leads into the sub question, which is, and you had to get this question. I'm telling you, GameStop. Okay, that's the question. So I'll paraphrase the question, but what happens to technicals with a binary event like GameStop, where it is what happened, a short squeeze, whatever you want to call it, it was off the statistical charts of the globe. Any usefulness with technicals here, or do we just like forget it and get it, put your seatbelts on? Any thoughts there? I mean, it's a tough one, right? I
great
don't know the
question.
answer to this one, quite frankly. My guess is technicals are probably not part of the equation here because it's not so random.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's an interesting one. I think you have to, for me, technical analysis is all about risk or reward, right? You're
Sure.
defining your reward potential, you're defining your potential risk. And so even though a stock like GameStop goes vertical, and there's all sorts of structural reasons why that happens, investors are squeezed, and that causes this, feedback loop that causes prices to go up. And then equally on the right side of the bubble, it causes a quick unwind as that strategy is no longer able to go further. I would probably make the very biased argument that charts are pretty meaningful all around, because for me, technical analysis charts are the way that you define your risk and your reward. So when something gets frothy, when something gets heated for whatever reason, charts are the way that you define your risk and define your reward. And I would hope when something increases in volatility, when something goes exponential, you are ratcheting up your risk assessment, you're ratcheting up a stop, you're looking at the volatility and taking that into account. For me, a chart is the way that you define that.
Got it.
So, the way that you lock in gains, the way that you manage your risk, the way that you preserve capital, the way that you survive to trade another trade tomorrow
Mhm.
is by focusing on charts and making sure that you update levels with where you need to pay attention to it. Grayson, I don't know if you'd answer that differently, but that's how I
Yeah.
think of it.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind is just that, what else are you going to turn to other than technicals? I mean, if you're trying to watch what's happening in GameStop, you can't really see it on a spreadsheet or anything like that. You kind of have to be watching the chart.
Yep.
In some ways, actually, I thought, I mean, I'll put this up here really quick. It's kind of a manipulated chart because it's a monthly chart of GameStop. It looks totally wacky,
Mhm.
but still, it gives us a sense that in some ways the GameStop movement actually was a pretty fascinating technical picture.
Yep.
Because it bounced right at the same level that we had found at sort of the bottom back in 2003.
Yep.
And then when you think about it, sort of how it traded around the highs, I mean, we basically I'll turn back on that inspector here. And we kind of came back to those same levels that had been tops in GameStop, back in the earlier 2000s. So actually there were some things that I was watching in GameStop thinking, this is kind of a fascinating technical example, the way that we've traded around some of these levels. I mean, you've got, again, the top there and sort of the bottom from the 2000s.
Sure.
So there were some fascinating things about it. At the same time, I think the biggest piece though is just that what are you going to be watching other than the technicals? I mean, that still is the best way to sort of get a sense of what's happening, as crazy as it was.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Great answer. The next question is on indicators. Is there a small basket of favorite indicators? Do you use this? I know you mentioned RSI, Dave, earlier. Are there a handful of others, or not even a handful, but something that's very powerful in your minds that helps give the analysis tool some meaning?
Grayson, your charts are up. Why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pull up something. Well, we'll go back to TradeWeb. Dave and I both have our toolkit. So I mean, the sort of default chart that I'm always looking at is this one here, which has a couple of different indicators. I mean, you've got the RSI that Dave was mentioning.
Sure.
I love watching the RSI. I use two indicators together on the same panel. One is called the accumulation distribution, and one is called the on balance volume.
Mhm.
They're very similar. It's just
Right.
sort of the slight differences in the way that they're calculated that provide a really interesting picture together. One looks at basically today versus yesterday, and the other one sort of brings in a midpoint view. So together you can sort of get a sense of, is this stock under net accumulation? Is it being bought overall, or is it being distributed? Is it being sold? I love to look at the scooter. Again, that's our StockCharts technical rank. But for me, I mean, all of that stuff, it's at the bottom of my charts for a reason, because there's nothing more important than just price movements. I mean, when I was talking about TradeWeb earlier, you'll notice that the first thing I'm talking about is the fact that it's making new highs. To me, price is way ahead of everything else. The only thing that kind of competes with that is relative strength. So up in the top panel here, I'll actually make this a little bit bigger. Up in the top panel here, we have TradeWeb versus VTI, which is the same panel that Dave was showing earlier with, what was it, SMH versus SPY. So that was SMH versus the S&P 500. When I'm looking at individual stocks, I like to look at the symbol versus VTI, which is the Vanguard Total Index. So really similar to the S&P 500, frankly, but a little bit broader because it is bringing in the total stock market for the U.S. But I want to find things that are trending higher, moving to new highs, and that are outperforming the market. So to me, those are so far in a way ahead of everything else. That's why these other indicators are sort of down at the bottom of my screen. For me, it's all about price and relative strength. Those are the two.
Great. Dave, you're on the same plane there? Do you have some different thoughts on that one?
I mean, I agree with most of what Grayson said. I think his indicator at the top, if you look at nothing else, looking at the relative strength, looking at the stock versus other stocks is vital. Tom Boley, who's one of our other commentators, once said, if you want to outperform the S&P 500, you have to own stocks that are outperforming the S&P 500. And I think a lot of times you get caught up in, especially with technical analysis, having a lot of indicators, really focusing on price action. But what the relative strength line tells you is, are you looking at the right chart in the first place at all? And if you do nothing else, then own stocks where that line is going up, and don't own stocks where the line is going down. Overall, you will probably outperform pretty decent from the S&P 500, outperform a passive product, just because you're leaning into what's working. And that's the essence of momentum investing and focusing on where the institutions are rotating. So I think, if nothing else, focusing on stocks in your portfolio where that line is going up, I think that would be key. And that's why ACP, to be honest, has been really, really valuable, because it's easy to flick through one at a time and see, do I own any stocks where this line is going down? And if so, you better have a really good justification for why you're still holding that position.
Okay. And then the follow up to that is, does volume play any part in the equation here? Is that an important metric?
Yeah, I have volume on my charts. You'll see it there at the bottom. It's pretty grayed out though, because to me it's secondary. It's something that I'm interested to see.
Sure.
Specifically, a stock breaking out to new highs on a big, green volume bar. I love to see that, but it's going to be a little bit further down the list. I mean, it's secondary to the actual price action itself and the relative strength, how that's trading versus the broader market.
Okay, good. All right, let me give it one more, and then I'll let you guys roll. How's that sign? Scanning. I think someone mentioned scanning. Does ACP do some scanning? And if so, a little brief description would be great. And then
Yeah, that's actually another big feature that we launched since the last time that we were on ACP. So over here on the right side of the platform, you'll notice there's a little kind of sliders icon. You click that, that's going to open the scans panel. So we have the ability now to run advanced technical scans right from the platform. For instance, here is new 52-week highs in the S&P 1500. That's a scan that I've set up.
Okay.
We can run that and you get a list of results back right now. You can see 169 stocks in the S&P 1500 making new 52-week highs.
Okay.
Scroll through this, any of these, you give them a click and you can quickly get a chart right there.
Okay.
You can also save those to a chart list at the bottom. So you can save those into your own list, work with that list later on, kind of keep it up to date. That's something that I do. Actually, every day after the close, I run the same set of scans for things that are making new 52-week highs, and I put them in one chart list. And then at the end of the week, because I've been sort of adding to that chart list over the course of the week, I end up with a list of stocks that have made a new 52-week high that week, and I can go sweep that on the weekend. So lots of stuff here. Actually, the other piece of it too is that you can do your own custom scans. If you're a StockCharts member, you've been writing your own scans, but there's also a tab here to do predefined scans. So there's a long list of different predefined scans that we've done. For instance, here's new 52-week lows. We can run that scan and again, get a list of results back. Lots of different options here for different candlestick patterns and bullish reversal patterns. I mean, just the list goes on and on. It's a big list.
So in your custom scans, Grayson, sorry, you can take a lot of those individual ones and combine them into bigger script of sorts. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, if we jump over and edit this scan, actually, so this is kind of what the scan syntax looks like.
Right.
All of this is sort of copy and pastable, if you will.
Got it.
So you can actually take pieces from different scans. You can go out to some of those predefined scans and sort of put them together, just copy them and paste them into the workbench, what we call the workbench. Lots of different options to build your scans. We have lots of resources here at the bottom of this page too. There's a bunch of resources down here for examples, instructions on how to write scans. There's a lot to learn, but there's also a lot of resources out there to make it a lot easier for you.
Awesome. Great stuff.
So
all right, that's terrific. Well, guys, I appreciate all this. This is fabulous. Great information. Dave, thanks for joining us. It was great. Grayson, always a pleasure. So lots. All right, guys. Well, good seeing you guys. Have a great rest of the day. And we will talk soon.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, Lex.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Lex.